I thought Bobby Lee was dead till I saw him on. I was watching the news thing, and he was on some news show, and he was pretty much like harassing this lady, like
Yeah,
sitting on her lap and
he
kissing her
always
and stuff
tries to
like
kiss
that.
him. Yeah, he always tries to
Yeah,
kiss him.
but he looked like a hobo. I thought he's dead. I was like, wait, is
No.
that Bobby Lee?
Is that the guy on the news show?
Yeah,
He's like sniffing that female
Yeah.
reporter.
yeah.
I love Bobby Lee. He's so great, man.
All right, so here's the plan for the match of the. I want to tease it for this episode, and then we're going to try to get together and watch it together at some point, and then I'll just splice it in.
Well, let's watch it together over Memorial Day weekend.
Okay, we can try.
Since
So,
I'll be off.
because that match is what, Jerry, like 15 minutes or something?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. All right. Welcome to episode 2 of the Untitled Wrestling Show presented by MonstersOfGeek.com. We still have a title. Nobody's kind of said anything yet. So if you have an idea, message us at monstersofgeek@gmail.com and just title it title for Untitled Wrestling Show or something like that, and I'll catch it. And we'll see. We'll even vote on it. Give us some options. But as of right now, it is the Untitled Wrestling Show. With me today, we have made his debut in the 1995 Halloween Havoc, co-founder of one of the devastating finishers, double team finishers of all time. We have Joe Yeti. What's up, man?
What's going on, Big Slim?
Ooh, I like that, Big Slim.
Mm-hmm.
And with us today, making his return to the podcast. It's been a while. Jared, was you on last episode of the main podcast? I don't think you were you?
No.
I can't remember.
I
I was on
think
2
so.
episodes ago, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I wasn't on the last one.
We have our World Heavyweight Champion representing the Monster of Geek universe, the man, the myth, the legend, Jared. What's up, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
What's it feel like to be champ? Like, what does it tell us? Tell us what it feels like to be champ.
I feel like Ric Flair all the time.
Mm.
Going around nature everywhere.
Nature everywhere. Do you go up space?
That's what he calls it. That's
You
what
ride-
he calls
Do
it.
you ride up Space
That's what
Mountain?
he go. Yeah,
Except you don't have 8 ex-wives.
that's true. I don't think I could afford that.
Bob, I think we should start introducing Jared as Mr. Heavyweight champion. Microphone drops, light dims.
I started to do a different intro every time. Started to do the big Valboski this time.
The big Jared Boski.
Yeah.
Man, next time I'm gonna go get some red light bulbs and get me a fog machine. I'm gonna crawl out of the hallway of my room.
Eating a can of eating a can of gummy worms.
Yeah.
Listen, there's a lot of travesty after Joe, basically broke his knee in half. But one of the greatest travesties of ever was that he lost his ability to do the Boogeyman dance. Like the Jared, and people who has ever seen the Boogeyman dance, he did it perfect. It was almost uncanny. Like he did it better than the Boogeyman did, basically. So
there's a lot of moving going on.
All right, so far we've talked about Savio Vega, Bastion Booger, and the Boogeyman on this wrestling podcast. I think it's the trifecta. All right, it's been a pretty busy week in wrestling. A lot of controversies over the last week or so since we did the last episode. One of the big things, and we'll talk about how it kind of came to be, and maybe if we agree with it, disagree with it, pros and cons of this. But your new WWE champion as of last Sunday, Jinder Mahal, is your new WWE champion. He defeated Randy Orton at Backlash. I joked with Joe. He's kind of joking about it on Saturday afternoon. He was hanging out at our parents' house, and I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually gave it to him. And lo and behold, they gave it to him. Jared, I want to get your perspective on this first because I think me and Joe's talked about this a little bit. But Jared, you don't watch a lot of WWE products. You keep up with it. You watch, you do watch some NXT every so often. The pay-per-views are good, or we'll get together and watch the SummerSlams and the Royal Rumble, some of the major stuff. But just from kind of an outsider's point of view, when you read that first he was the number one contender, and then now he's the champion, give your perspective a little bit here.
Well, I actually was watching SmackDown. I think when he became the number one contender, I was at the gym running on the treadmill, and it had come on while I was there, so it kind of piqued my interest a little bit. But I kind of compare it to some of the early SmackDown. You know, the way they kind of booked SmackDown. With some surprises in there. I kind of compare him to maybe JBL.
Heard that
as the
comparison.
way a surprise type of heel. He don't remind you of your, what are they portraying him as? I don't know if they're portraying him as Arabic or
He's Indian. Yeah, I mean,
Indian. Yeah,
Punjabi.
But he's from Canada, so
yeah.
But they're not portraying him in like a Davari type way or anything,
right?
And I kind of like having another heel. It's somebody you can kind of hate that they really hadn't had in a while. I mean, everybody didn't like Randy Orton, and then Randy Orton comes back and he's a face now.
Right.
So you always have people flip flopping, but he's maybe somebody who could be that sustainable heel like JBL was, and it gives somebody different. I know he was a jobber for a while, but I'd like to see him work with AJ or Nakamura or Kevin Steen. I mean, you've got a plethora of guys you can throw in there now, and you can have 2 or 3 heels at the top and 2 or 3 babies too to carry the company on that side, rather than just relying on the 1 or 2 that they usually give them. So, I mean, I don't think it's a bad move. I think, if it doesn't work out, he'll just be a short-term champion to move on to Nakamura or Kevin Owens or AJ again.
Yeah, Joe, what do you think, man? I just want to get my initial, kind of talk about, because I wrote down some points here, and a lot of it Jared has kind of touched on. Joe, what was your reaction to the win?
Well, I'm not on top of the win yet, because at first when he became the number one contender, I think I didn't really like it. I think I almost hated it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the more I think about it, he's probably the only true heel in the company, because he's the only person that people boo pretty much, besides Roman Reigns.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
he's not a true heel.
I know, but I'm just saying. Like, I'm just saying that everybody boos him pretty much. Like, I don't think there's hardly any cheers when he comes out. But Kevin Owens is portrayed as a heel, and he gets cheers. So I mean, I think he's really the only true. Well, no, I say true heel just because of the fact that Ray, the fan, portrays him and don't like him. And I think I've grown on to liking that he has the title now.
I was kind of, when he first got the number one contendership, I thought, well, obviously in a match with that many people in it, especially main event guys, you didn't think that he would get the match. I do like how they introduced the Bollywood boys or the Singh brothers into this. I think it does give him this like kind of old school heel with these little guys trying to help him out and stuff like that. I do like the adding those 2 guys in there because they're pretty talented themselves, and I'm glad to see them on the roster. A couple things, with this. One, the more I thought about it, kind of like with Joe, the more I thought about it, the more I didn't really have an issue with him winning the belt. First of all, I think SmackDown does need heels. Like they're dry on heels at this point. They have, or they're either dry on heels or the heels they have are boring. Ziggler's boring again. They've booked him as a super underdog babyface, and now he's back to being the cocky heel again, and he's boring again. You look at what they've done with Kevin Owens, already in a feud with AJ, so that kind of takes him out of the world title picture as of right now. Baron Corbin is boring. I mean, just absolutely boring as sin. Not saying he's not a good wrestler. I think he's got a bright future, but as of right now, he's super boring. He reminds me of like Randy Orton's first 10 years in WB, like just absolutely just boring. So I could see, looking at the landscape, there really isn't anyone that is a natural heel minus The Miz that wasn't already a heel. Joe, you talk about natural heels. They took away the natural heel off of SmackDown with Miz. They took Bray Wyatt off of SmackDown, who was enjoying a pretty good heel run. I mean, you can make whatever you want to about the Orton feud, but he was making that's probably some of the best use of Bray Wyatt we've had in a while. So I felt like it was time for a fresh heel. And I think Jinder Mahal fits that. Second of all, he's not a bad wrestler. I mean, he's not terrible by any stretch. I mean, people was complaining about the him hurting Finn Balor. I was listening to David Meltzer the other day. He was talking about how Sheamus has hurt more people than anybody, and how he knocked Jeff Hardy's tooth out with Jeff Hardy just laying there. I mean, basically not moving, and he pretty much messed him up and knocked his tooth out. At least with the injury to Finn Balor, he was moving, and he just misjudged it. He came around too hard. He maybe was moving a little bit too fast, maybe a little bit too close. You could see that mistake happening versus Sheamus kicking a prone wrestler and kicking his teeth out, basically. So to be quite honest, I don't have an issue with it. In the way that they're doing it, I watched up till his celebration the other night, and they did it well. He's a brooding foreign heel. I mean, it's what it is. At some point, I'm sure they'll tweak the character a little bit, but I think if Rusev would have been healthy, I think that's Rusev's spot. I think that with Rusev being hurt, that they decided to kind of go with the Jinder Mahal thing. The only issue I have is that, unlike JBL, and this is where the JBL comparison, Jared, I think are fair. I think that it is very much a comparison I've heard from a lot of people. The only issue that I have is that JBL was at least established as some sort of a winner. Like he was multi-time tag team champion. I think he was hardcore champion. Him and Ron Simmons had a pretty good gimmick going. So he was at least in the limelight. He was a winner. He won some matches, actually more matches than probably what we realized during that time. The only thing with Jinder was I think his stats was, and I know wins and losses don't really mean much in wrestling, but he was like 2-60 since coming into the main roster for that second run. So that's the difference I feel like with JBL. He was established at least somewhat of a mid-card tag team guy, a mid-card guy in the hardcore title run. He had feuded with some guys. He feuded with Taker for a little bit early on in his career. So that's the only issue that I have. They've done a good job of actually making him believable, but in the same sense, I feel like they could have done a better job of at least building him up to this. Because, I mean, the big thing is they're trying to get into India. They probably knew they was trying to get into India, so I don't know why they didn't start earlier with this push. Like, even on Raw, like have him beat some guys on Raw and make him a big signing for SmackDown or a big switch, have him build up a little bit. That's the only problem I have. There was no build up. JBL had some credentials coming in as a single star, even though it was a completely different character technically, but I feel like he had a little bit more legitimacy than what Jinder Mahal had.
If they wanted to, I heard about, he was basically a glorified jobber, but if they wanted to kind of create some controversy or something, maybe do like a PED angle.
Sure.
Where he's on, like, oh, he tested dirty, and then like, oh, but now he gave a clean sample and he has a clean sample and a dirty, something like that, where he's trying to, so he took something to make him become this winner like he is.
Well, there's no doubt in my mind he took something. Like you can look at his body the first time around and look at this one. He's on something.
Yeah, but I mean, it would make it for a good storyline though, and what caused him to become this person. So I think that would be a good idea.
Go ahead, Joe.
I was gonna say if they knew they was gonna push him, I wouldn't have minded to see him put the belts on him and Rusev and Rusev and him as a tag team.
Well, I thought that's what they was going to do, and to be quite honest, I kind of like that tag team. Mm-hmm. It's been a while since we had like his kind of two brutes in a tag team type of thing, especially on the main roster. I don't know. I do think that if Rusev was healthy, I don't think Jinder would have got this push. No. I think Rusev would have been there to feud with Orton, and that's fine. I think Rusev's a better wrestler than Jinder, even though I just said Jinder's not a bad wrestler. I just think he can do more in the ring. Here's a question for you guys. Jinder Mahal, obviously a big dude, definitely different from like the Finn Balor's and the AJ Styles of the world, Kevin Owens of the world as far as body type. Braun Strowman, before he got injured, probably going to beat Brock Lesnar for the Universal title at some point. Big dudes, Brock Lesnar's a world champ, big dude. Are we starting to see maybe a return to the big guy push? Now, I know WB's, this was their MO. pushing big dudes, big muscular type dudes. There's a couple in there. Punk got a push during that time. Orton got a push during that time. Edge. There weren't a lot of smaller guys getting pushes against bigger fellas. But do you think that they're going to try to push some more bigger guys now, as far as body type?
I
And
think
let me
you'll
say this:
see.
I'm a huge fan of Braun Strowman. I think they have booked him genius with Braun Strowman, so I have no issue, and he can actually wrestle. To be quite honest, he's done a really good job. But are you afraid that Vince looks at Jinder Mahal and like, he's a genetic freak, JR? Is this is that what he's looking at here?
I think he's kind of past that.
Mm-hmm.
I think he sees big guys, and when they start to get over, or unless you're Roman Reigns, they just push you no matter what. But like for Strowman, he slowly got over. The people bought into it, and I think there are too many smaller guys that you just create this thing that you had like back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Like you see the stuff with AJ, and even Vince, sees what he has in AJ. And people like Finn Balor and Seth Rollins, and even what they did with Chris Jericho. And I don't think Kevin Owens, he's not really that big of a guy. I mean,
no, not at all.
Taller,
he's
muscular.
He's a bigger guy in a different way. Him and like Samoa Joe are bigger guys in a different way.
Yeah, and I think you'll see like Strowman and Lesnar and Jinder Mahal. I think like Strowman is going to become like the monster that you need.
Mm-hmm.
The thing like Mark Henry could never become.
Right.
The reason, like what Kane and the Undertaker used to be back in the Attitude Era.
Right.
They were these big monsters, and then you have the underdog like Stone Cold was, always figuring out a way to beat them. But it never hurt their character because he always ended up squeaking by somehow. So I think if it's done right, they'll become more of an attraction. Unless, I think the belt will go on Strowman at some point. He's a big guy who can really move around the ring.
Yeah, I think that, some of the matches that they booked with Strowman against smaller guys, I think was smart without necessarily making those guys look weak either. I thought they booked the Sami Zayn thing perfectly when he beat him. On the Last Man Standing. I thought with Kalisto, I thought it was a funny finish where he, kicked him in the knees and he just kind of fell in the dumpster. He didn't really fall in. He just kind of, knees down. It's like he just kind of just stood in there. He just got knocked off and stood in the dumpster. I thought that was neat without necessarily destroying Kalisto's character, but still booking Braun super strong. So I think they've evolved their booking for these big guys, where it's not necessarily always them just running through people or making people look bad or making Sami Zayn look like a jobber because he's not a jobber, or just throwing him in there to put him over. I thought they've done a really good job with his booking. I didn't think they were going to do a good job with his booking, but I think they've done a pretty good job. But that's just a question on Twitter being thrown around. I thought was interesting. You have Jinder Mahal and then you have Braun Strowman. Definitely a little bit different from what they've been doing lately with a lot of the guys they've been bringing in. But they do. But Jared, I think you make a good point. They do seem special now. Like it's not, the Great Khali and Mark Henry and all these guys that they're pushing, and they're all big guys versus a small group of small guys. They do seem special again, like they did, even in the 80s when you had like Andre the Giant and Big John Studd, and those guys seem special, and now they've done a pretty good job of making them seem like an attraction again. Even Brock, I think probably you could probably thank Brock for that to a certain extent, but I think they've done a pretty good job of making those guys feel like something special again.
I tell you one guy that I'm surprised that they haven't really pushed single yet. That's Big Cass. Like I really thought Big Cass would get a big push.
I think it's coming. I think they're trying to figure out what to do with Enzo because Enzo is still pretty talented. I think
still have him. Let me tell you, they should put the tag team titles on them, and then give Cass the Intercontinental title. Let him feud with like the Miz or somebody like that.
I think Enzo would be good with the 205, but we're getting off subject. I think he'd be a really good cruiserweight, to be honest. Let's take so Jinder Mahal, WB World Champion. Congrats to him, man. That is surprising, but hey, guy, he did something to get noticed. So good, congratulations to him. I hope it's not a flash in the pan. I hope that they create a heel that they can use for a long time, and he can contribute to storylines and whatnot. So hopefully he can stick around. So congrats. First Indian champion, I believe, for WB as well. So congrats there. The second big thing going on in wrestling today was Randy Orton being a jerk.
Say what?
Not nothing new. I think we all know Randy Orton from reports is a pretty big jerk from time to time.
Watch out for your handbags.
Yep.
Watch out for the handbag. But also, there's CM Punk's a jerk too, and we love him. So, so Randy went on a little bit. Well, let me see if I can. I've had the screenshot pulled up. Now I don't know where it went.
I've got him.
Okay. It started with, and Jared, maybe you could. I don't know who Rip Rogers is. Okay, I've heard the name. I don't know. I haven't seen. I don't even know if I've ever seen a Rip Rogers match. Just on even the random those old NWA, WCW pay-per-views where Tommy Rich was on there for a random match or whatever. I don't think I've ever seen Rip Rogers.
I've seen some Rip Rogers matches, and he was actually on the Stone Cold podcast. He still helps train at OVW,
which I didn't even know OVW was still around.
Yeah, and I mean he's got a really good mind for the business. He's just an old school, come up. Yeah, I think he started in like 78 or something and worked through Mid-South and just around places like they used to.
And I'm not saying that to be just because I haven't heard of him. He's a bad wrestler or anything. I've just never seen a Rip Rogers match. I've heard him mentioned, but I've never seen a match. So earlier last year, during the Ricochet and Will Ospreay match in New Japan, Vader went on a big rant, kind of the same kind of rant. It got picked up by a bunch of wrestlers. The difference was Will Ospreay's like, hey, let's wrestle Vader. And they actually did it at an indie show. I didn't watch it, but apparently they did wrestle at an indie show. But this started with Rip Rogers. This is what he put on Twitter. And Rip has been ripping the indie scene for quite some time now, from what I understand. So this is what it says. It said every indie match now, handshake, drawn out move exchange. This is awesome chant. Strike exchange, dive, no sell, indie strong style. Dive, more strikes, no sells. Dive, flippy floppy sequence, dive, hit everyone with each other's finisher. Then Humpty Dumpty, we all fall down. Fight forever chant, rinse and repeat until every move is useless and means nothing. Dive, take unsafe shot that looks like crap and hurts like heck, then roll up finish. Handshake and hug after match. Everyone's hands raised. All these guys chant. Go home and type on social media thanking your opponent and company for the match and telling others they should book these guys. And then a big ellipses and dive. So let me say this. He's not far off. Like, it's not like he's not. My issue isn't the way he described the match, because a lot of indie matches, and I guess you could start with ROH to a certain extent, kind of started this kind of sequences as far as indie matches go. But that's why we love indie matches, because they are, even though they kind of follow this kind of formula, everybody does it differently, and I think that's where independent matches are so exciting. That's why guys like Cody Rhodes wants to do independent wrestling and doesn't want to do WB anymore, because of all the great matches that you have there. And I'm not saying every independent match is great. Some of them are crap, just like some old matches are crap, and just like some WB matches are crap. So everybody can have crappy matches no matter what. But most of the time, indie matches are pretty good. Mostly because you got guys that want to prove stuff. So, Randy Orton retweeted that. We all know Randy, and we'll talk about Randy here in a minute. So people jumped on Randy pretty hard, and rightfully so. So Randy, being Randy Orton, the Viper, the cynical, wise butt, posted this and said, I really need to issue an apology, and then posted apparently very popular to write notes in your phone and then post a note on Twitter. I didn't know this was a thing, but apparently this is a thing. It says, sorry to indie marks, indie guys, and old timers who do dives took offense. So the old guy was Bubba Ray. Apparently he did a dive in a 6-man match at ROH. And Randy posted, looks like just like an old dude that fell over or something. Bubba Ray jumped on and said, Randy, you're wrong again. What is that? Okay, somebody's making a bunch of noise. Randy, you're wrong again. Love you, buddy. but whatever. So so this is what I say. Sorry to indie marks, indie guys, and old timers who do dives took offense. Just having a good time over a few drinks in Denmark, closing the SmackDown Live tour while beating Raw and making over $5 million in the last 11 shows. Now, I know to some that doesn't equate to a standing room only crowd of 150 people paying $8 in an armory somewhere. But in the big boy world, that's called putting butts in seats. So enjoy your flips, dives, and 20 super kicks per match. To each their own. I will go dive back into my 13th title run and get ready to flip when my bank statement comes this month. Ellipses headlock. So, not surprised by that response from Randy Orton in the slightest. This really blew up on Twitter. This really just took on a life of its own. It was kind of fun to watch. Some people, obviously, a shot at the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks took a shot at Randy Orton. One guy on Twitter said, you may have 13 title reigns, but we can't remember any of them, which was pretty funny. And Randy said something about paychecks or something, but, who cares? Because that guy got him pretty good. I don't know. I know Joe was aware of this. I don't know if Jared was aware of this. My issue with this, and I think Ricochet got on there because apparently he had just got off a flight. And he said, "Oh man, what happened this time? Who trashed my match this time?" Because everybody was kind of, tweeting at him and whatnot. I don't think this is smart for Randy Orton because look who he's wrestling with now. Like he's wrestling with AJ Styles, he's wrestling with Kevin Owens, he's wrestling with Sami Zayn. All these guys that busted their butt with those 150 people paying $8 in an armory somewhere. Now I don't know how they took this. If I was AJ Styles, I'd probably take it. He probably don't know Randy very well, so I don't know how he took it. But for me personally, and seeing all those guys that are now superstars and maybe more, better household names than even Randy Orton is now, you got to think that maybe not very good comments to say about your coworkers. Jared, what do you think about what Rip said? We kind of expect it from those guys, and then Randy kind of jumping on it as well, and then getting killed for it on Twitter. What do you think about what Randy said in particular? Or what Rip said, whatever you want to go with.
Well, what Rip said, it was basically the truth. I've heard him talk about it and several others that, it's just a high spot fest to get all your stuff in. And then, that's pretty much it. And what Randy Orton said, I think that's just his personality.
Yeah.
If I was him, I probably wouldn't have said it. His coworkers are all of them are the people who came from those spots now, and just because he learned to work in a certain type of environment. If he wasn't working in WWE and was out there, he'd be doing the exact same thing.
Maybe. I don't know.
Well, probably. Well, you never know. But I think some of the comments were kind of outrageous, and talking about his $5 million, his sit back and look at his bank account and stuff like that. And I know the Young Bucks, they make more money on the independent scene than they would if they were when they were in WWE.
Yep.
So, they're making a lot more money than, but they're enjoying what they're doing too. So, I can see both sides of it. If you're having fun doing it and everybody's enjoying it, who cares?
Joe, looking at Randy never wrestled independent at all. He was in OVW for a year, which at that point was a WB developmental territory. He's a son of Bob Orton, and Jared, if I'm not mistaken, his grandfather wrestled too. He's a third generation star. So obviously on the radar, much like Cody Rhodes was, and even Cody talked about that, being able, he basically had an open door at WB if he wanted to wrestle when he was ready. Do you think it's a little, and this is Randy, so obviously it's self-centered. But especially the part about the 150 people paying $8 in an armory somewhere. I thought that you could brag about your title runs and you can brag about how much money you make, but that's where I think he went a little bit overboard. Because here's a guy, he's never had to work in an armory. Like, he was up on the main roster within a year. He was put into one of the biggest stables during the time of Evolution. I'm not saying he didn't pay his dues, but he kind of didn't pay his dues, right? Like, he could talk about paying dues all he wants, but he didn't pay dues like AJ Styles did or Finn Balor did or any of those guys. What do you think about that comment in general? Like, do you think if you take that comment out, do you think that's an okay thing? But with the comment in, what do you think about that comment in general?
No, it's not an okay thing. I mean, it's not. He said it was an apology, but air quotations, but it's not. I mean, you talk about the amount of money you make in an apology, and then it still wouldn't be something that I would like to see. And then going back to the coworker thing, I mean, you got to look. He'd probably on feud with either AJ or Kevin Owens here in the next, couple months, or potentially see a feud with Shinsuke Nakamura. And I mean, who wants to make him mad?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the guys on the indie scene, like you look at some of the top guys like Omega and the Young Bucks and some other people who make a lot of money on it because they own the merchandise, they own a lot of stuff. I mean, and they can out wrestle. They can probably wrestle circles around Randy Orton.
And I'm not saying this isn't me saying that, at some point, obviously Randy had to work hard to get where he's at to a certain extent, but you could also argue that he didn't have to work as hard as, say, like an AJ Styles to get noticed. Because as soon as he come up, I mean, he was hanging out with Triple H. He's part of Evolution, for goodness sake. I mean, He was already getting a push before he even knew what a push was with those guys. And that's the comment that I got kind of irritated about. The rest of it's Randy, and that's fine. You talk about all your money you want. You're just like any other pro athlete at that point. But at this point, I think it's funny that they asked him which his two favorite RKOs was. One of them was Evan Bourne, which was an awesome RKO. Here's a guy that made his career flipping around all over the place, and he basically made the best RKO for Randy. Mm-hmm. And then you look at someone like Seth Rollins, who did the curb stomp, and he popped him straight up in the air, and he got an RKO out of it. Those guys are athletes. Those guys learned how to do stuff like that on the indies. And so it's almost like he probably needs to watch what he says, because those guys at some point are going to be more popular than he is, and they're going to remember that and maybe not want to work with Randy because of that, because Randy's boring. I mean, the last 4 or 5 years, he's finally got that Viper thing down and his persona's good, but Randy's in-ring style is pretty boring unless you put him in there with someone that can make him look a little bit more fresh in the ring.
I love sorry.
Go ahead.
Now, there's one tweet where I can't remember who said it, but they pretty much told him to come try throwing a fit on the real man and see how it works.
But I think this leads all back to this: indie wrestling isn't perfect. WB wrestling isn't perfect. Like what you like, like what you like all wrestling. Even though I don't agree with everything WB does, some of their matches are still poor. It's a lot better than what it used to. I agree that sometimes indie matches can get kind of silly. There's some spots that are absolutely ludicrous and is super silly, but in the same sense, it's wrestling. And I think that you can't take wrestling too seriously. You take wrestling too seriously and you become a big loudmouth like Cornette is. You just can't enjoy the product very much. And if you don't like it, don't watch it. Like, if you don't like indie stuff, don't watch it. Rip Rogers, if you don't like it, don't watch it.
I think if everybody took Tommy Dreamer's approach, back when I listened to him again on the Stone Cold's podcast, he doesn't go a day without watching some form of it. I mean, he's like, when I come home, he's like, from a show, I'll unwind and sit down and watch an hour or something.
Yep.
When he works it on the treadmill, he's got it on the TV. I mean, he's always watching something. He's loved it since he was 5 years old, or however old he was, going to Madison Square Garden. So, I mean, if you love it, watch what you love. So,
yep. And you can learn to have it here's the thing, and this goes back to Randy kind of ripping on guys that made their name in the indies and build up. Ricochet said kind of the same thing Tommy Dreamer did. He's like, look, you may not like everything, but we can all agree that we all love wrestling. In some form or fashion, we all love wrestling, and that we're all trying to do what we love in different ways. And I feel like someone, especially as high profile as Randy is, Randy has he shouldn't say anything. He should be thanking AJ Styles for even stepping in WB, to give him fresh matchups, to make him look fresh. And I'm not bagging on Randy. Like I said, I actually enjoyed Randy the last 5 years of his run. I don't think he needs the belt. I think he's got to the point where he's more interesting without the championship. But I've enjoyed Randy's work the last 5 or 6 years. But just enjoy wrestling, man. If you're a wrestler, don't bag on other wrestlers. Don't bag on the Young Bucks. Young Bucks are making bank, like Jared said. They're looking at their paycheck being like, we get to go where we want. We get to do what we want. We could do silly. We could do serious. You're in WB. That's all you got, man. That's the only paycheck you can get is in WB. So if anybody should be talking trash, it should be the Young Bucks. And what they've achieved has been amazing and really transformed how people look at indie wrestling. I mean, the Young Bucks are being profiled on Sports Illustrated, ESPN. They just signed a big deal with Hot Topic to get their stuff in there. These are independent guys. They're not signed with anybody. They're doing it on their own. I think that's super awesome for those guys. Randy's going to be Randy, but Randy better watch what he says, man. I mean, he's got a lot of talented dudes around him now, and let's hope that those guys will take it to heart and can at least work with him and get some good matches. So. But it was fun to watch it, kind of go up on Twitter. It was interesting, some of the comments that was made, both for and against Randy. I thought was pretty funny. But just go watch wrestling. Watch what you enjoy. Dabble and stuff. Maybe you don't think you enjoy. Maybe you'll be surprised, and just go enjoy wrestling, man. That's why we do this podcast. We enjoy wrestling. We enjoy all wrestling. So. All right. So we've got a couple topics here we need to cover. Let's see. So, Jared, go ahead with your topic today.
All right. I think I was watching some old Clash of the Champion matches, and you always see a constant come through there. And even I was listening to some other podcasts, and you think about people who were tag team specialist, and I use the example of Arn Anderson. He teamed with Ole, then he teamed with Tully, and he teamed with Bobby Eaton, Larry Zbyszko, Paul Roma, and they were tag champs every time. Somebody who he did great as a singles, but he really shined as a tag wrestler. So I was. Is there anybody today that kind of fits that same mold who should be maybe in that situation, but they don't use them the right way? I know kind of a modern equivalent may be Gold Dust.
Mm-hmm.
They've used him with Cody, and they used him with Booker T, and maybe
up until recently, R-Truth.
Yeah, R-Truth.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple more throughout his reign. So, he's kind of fell into that mold as he's got older.
This is a tough question. As far as, man, I was thinking about today, trying to think, man. I tell you, he's a main event guy now, but AJ had a lot of good runs in tag teams. Him and Daniels had a good run. I remember him and Tyson Tomko being a really good tag team in TNA, kind of a big guy, little guy type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he's multi-talented. He can do just about anything. Obviously, he is more known for his single stuff, but he had some pretty good tag team runs in TNA with some guys as well. I'll try to think of some other ones, but that one was the first one I thought about just because, AJ's probably my favorite wrestler now on any roster. So, but I remember him and Daniels. That's one heck of a tag team, man. I enjoyed watching those guys. Their feud with if you want good TNA stuff, go check out their feud with LAX. That was a great feud. Had a really good match at Lockdown. That was really good. The
team they didn't really keep them together long enough, though.
No, they didn't. I think it was together for like 2 months or something, and that was just about it. So, Joe, what about you, man?
When I first read the question, I thought the Good Brothers came to mind because both Gallows and Anderson, they're really good single compared competitors. But that tag team, that's what really kind of gave them the spotlight almost when they was in Japan.
And they teamed with some other guys too, didn't they, Jared?
Mm-hmm.
Anderson teamed with another guy in the Bullet Club. Was it Battle of Fell, maybe? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think so. And then Gallows was in TNA. He used several different ways, and even teamed with Punk.
Yep. Should have
with
been
the Straight
tag
Edge
team too, by the way.
Yeah, with the
Yeah.
Straight Edge Society.
Yep.
Or even him and Joey Mercury. Or not was it Joey Mercury?
How about
that
the
they brought in?
Miz?
That's exactly who I was going
How
to
about the
bring up.
Miz, man? Yeah, yeah.
It's somebody who, he's never really been, but I mean, you got two upper mid card guys who could work really well together. The Miz or maybe even Dolph Ziggler, who's never even worked in a tag team really. But I think one of those guys would fit well into a spot. If you had a big guy or even somebody that comparative the same size.
What about Bray?
He could probably. He's so over. Yeah, but I mean, if you matched him up with the right person,
I mean, he and Randy was huge together, and then
yeah, I think him. It just has to be the right person. Like the Miz, I think you could throw him with anybody, or like Chris Jericho, you can throw him in with anybody. He did it with Big Show.
Yep.
He did it with Kevin Owens, kinda. He could mesh in there with anybody.
the Jericho Show is probably one of my favorite tag teams.
Or maybe Rhino.
Rhino is another
Rhino
one.
Rhino and Heath Slater.
Rhino and Heath Slater. Rhino and Tajiri was a tag team for a while. Yep. Who else? But that's someone. I mean, I think you're just talking about guys that can, can help get other guys over.
Yeah.
Like Rhino helped get Slater over.
If you had Rhino and the Miz together, I think that would work really well.
Kind of like a bodyguard type of thing.
Kind of like a bodyguard type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But I mean, it's just something you don't see that much anymore.
You don't, and that was something we always talk about with Paul Heyman and how good Paul Heyman was with just throwing guys together and just watching them stick. And I think that in WWE, I don't think they do that as much. Now let me say this: I think they've done better because you had two guys, as Sheamus and Cesaro, for example.
Yeah,
they're super popular. They're somewhat over. At least Cesaro was. You put them together in that kind of, we hate you, but we're going to be a tag team thing. And now they've become one of my favorite tag teams. Great chemistry. They work well together. You look at Heath and, Rhino and Slater has really worked out. I thought that Mojo Rawley and Zack Ryder worked out really well before Zack Ryder went out. I think that I think they're starting to do it, better that way. But I don't think there's really any more tag team specialists, unfortunately. I just don't think that there's any guy that'd be like, okay, hey, put this young guy in a tag team with this dude, or put it and watch him kind of grow into something else.
Cesaro might be the closest. I mean, they put him with Tyson Kidd, now with Sheamus.
Yeah.
You've had two pretty long running tag teams.
And to tell you the truth, I think he really saved Sheamus.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it allows Sheamus to be Sheamus, but with someone else to kind of bounce it off of. Because Sheamus is about like Orton at this point. He's not going to change much. They're not going to change their style. They're kind of boring to a certain extent. Even though I think, Sheamus should get a little bit more credit than what he's deserved a lot of times because he's a good wrestler. But I think his character just became stale. Same with Kofi Kingston. Kofi's been in there with Evan Bourne. You got the New Day. He was tag team champions with Punk. So there's a couple times where he's been thrown into the fire with some guys that I think he's done a pretty good job with. But, I mean, I don't think there's anyone like Arn Anderson. I mean, not out there anymore. And not, you just throw Arn in there with anybody and they're a legit tag team. Like he makes them a legit tag team. But yeah. Good question, Jared. I never really thought about it. But I think the Miz is probably, you look, he's, him and Nitro or Morrison, him and R-Truth, him and Big Show. So he's been in a lot of really successful tag teams that just kind of worked. So maybe the Miz, I don't know. But good question, Jared. Let's see. So Joe, do you want to introduce your question here?
Yeah, and I was watching Next Takeover Chicago. And this is what really brought it up with as much talent as WWE has, do you feel like it's spread its main roster too thin?
I don't necessarily think it's too thin. I think the issue is they just don't know how to use it. I think the cruiserweights being on Raw, and well, I think 205 being taped after SmackDown is really hurting as a show. But I think they have a lot of talent they don't know what to do with. Because I think some of those guys on 205 could really blossom on SmackDown if they got the opportunity. I think some of the UK guys, which I don't know what their plan is with the UK. I don't know if they want to keep that kind of separate before they start bringing some of these guys in to establish. But I think the UK is perfectly where it's at. I don't think it needs to be, in I guess in it. I think they're managing NXT okay. I don't know, man. I don't think it's necessarily too thin. I just think they mismanaged their rosters. I think the rosters are too thin on the main shows. I think is what the biggest issue is. That's just my personal opinion. They just don't know how to use the roster they got.
Yeah, I think they've got just so many people that trying to figure out where to put everybody and how to book them. I mean, you can only do so much.
Right.
I think it's the same problem. I watched Kevin Nash one time. They were talking about booking however much TV they had per week. And
Like
he would
6
say
hours
that,
or something.
yeah, something ridiculous. I mean, then that was, he's talking about, booking Nitro and then going and booking Thunder. And then like they had one other side program, like a Saturday morning.
They had Saturday night, and they had the Saturday morning show too, worldwide, and then Saturday night not main event, but the one they showed on TBS at 7:05 or whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean, so you're looking at, well, then Nitro moved to 3 hours, and the other one was 2 hours, and then there's another hour and another hour. So it's like 7 or 8 hours of programming a week, and trying to book it all, and it's just too hard for one group to sit down and book. And I know they have like SmackDown writers and Raw writers and everything, but still Vince has got his hand in everything, and you've spread yourself too thin over too many shows. Not that they don't have the talent to do it, because like NXT runs great on its own, but when you've got this other stuff you're mixing in, like the 205 to go along with SmackDown, or after SmackDown, because you can't put them first because they hype everybody up, and every match after that sinks.
Yep. Yeah.
So they have to be in a special spot, and it's a very delicate process that they don't. It's a good problem to have, but it also hurts your product.
Yeah, I mean, I think and that's the thing. I just think they don't, and I've said for years they don't know how to book Raw correctly. Now I know there's a lot of money in that third hour. Apparently JBL said something, they make like an extra, was it $17-18 million in that third hour or something. So I can see why they don't want to get rid of that. I just don't think they pace themselves very well. I think they have enough talent where you could put on match after match after match if you wanted to. And even cover the one thing with Raw that kills me is they recap the show like 20 times in 3 hours, and it just drives you up the wall. And so I just think it's mismanagement of TV time. Even Triple H said 3 hours is too much for Raw in an interview with Stone Cold. So I just think it's more a mismanagement of time and resources, but not necessarily a thinned out roster. That's what I think.
I mean, I just find some of the product boring compared to some of the matches on NXT, and then you had the United Kingdom Championship that happened that was really exciting. Same with the 205 class or the Cruiserweight Classic. One thing that I hate that they do on Raw is they treat the Cruiserweights like it's their own show still.
Yeah.
Like they don't incorporate, like they change the ring, they do everything. Just incorporate them into Raw. Like they're not on 205. Don't worry about changing the ring. It's Raw. Let them wrestle on Raw.
Yeah.
Now I think SmackDown. The one thing I did enjoy for the past month was SmackDown building up this Nakamura Dolph Ziggler match, where they just cut promos. You might have seen them fight each other in the ring a couple times. You didn't see a match until that Sunday.
Yeah.
And that's what I enjoyed about it. But another thing that makes me kind of mad is you see, them throw a tag team together of like Nakamura and AJ Styles versus Kevin Owens and Dolph Ziggler, and you just I get bored of watching them work like that, kind of with the same people. When you have all this talent to come in that can put a really good match out, not saying job the people out, but put on a good decent match between like AJ Styles and maybe bring up Hideo Tome, just for one match, and then have him wrestle on NXT still, but have him put on a good match, exciting match with AJ Styles, something that we've never seen, instead of AJ Styles wrestling Kevin Owens for the 13th time on a Tuesday that we've seen 13 times before.
I think one of the first podcasts I brought up this same point. I think it may have been Wrestle Kingdom 9, and JR was talking about how Nakamura and whoever he was wrestling, I can't remember who it was, but like they didn't touch for 3 months building up that program.
It's probably AJ, wasn't it?
No, that was 10 that they wrestled. This one was 9 the year before. But at the same time, like neither of them had lost building up to that program. I mean, they might have cut promos or there might have been a run in, but they didn't have like a singles match. They might have been in like a 6-man or a tag occasionally, but it wasn't, it wasn't something like, we have to do something every week to keep this fresh.
Right.
And that's what they feel like they need to do.
I mean,
go ahead, John.
I just think you have so much young talent that put them on a show like Raw or SmackDown just for, every few episodes, just to bring them up and have them a decent match. Don't job them out. Have a good 10, 15-minute match with them. I think would help them out in the long run, help out the product. I mean, I would love to see like a Nakamura and Pete Dunne match. You got Strong Style versus the Slobber Knocking Style that Pete Dunne has. And just have them go at it for a good 10, 15 minutes, and I think it would steal the show.
Well, that's also a slippery slope because I think what you have to do, you can't just bring up a young guy and have him have a good match with someone like Nakamura. Well, I think it's a slippery slope to go. I mean, I agree. Maybe they should do like an NXT spotlight match and bring up Hideo, maybe bring up Hideo and put him in the ring with some other NXT guy and have like an NXT spotlight match on SmackDown or something. But I think it's hard just to bring up. They did it really well with Sami Zayn, but at that point, Sami Zayn he had some pretty crazy matches with WB talent like Cesaro and guys like that. That kind of built him up. I thought they did a really good job with the US title invitation when Cena started to really kind of bring up some of those young guys and do it that way. But I think it's a slippery slope because you just can't bring up a dude, even though it's Hideo Itami, and we know that he's Kenta and he could go toe to toe with Nakamura if he's booked right. The casual viewing audience of WWE doesn't know that. So you have to be kind of careful not to tarnish a star like Nakamura, but also build up Hideo without necessarily making him look like a jobber. So I think that's a little bit of a steeper thing to do. I like the idea, but you have to be really careful how you book it.
Or at least, use some of these 205s and let them have a real –
Sure, and that's the thing. Like Raw, you need a 15-minute chunk. Put Aries and TJ Perkins in there for 15 minutes and see him tear down the house. I mean, I think that's the thing is that they feel like Raw is so time-wise, and I'm not saying I could run the show better, but time-wise, it's just so janky. It's like opening segment, match, recap, backstage segment, recap, match. It's just like, why can't we do like there should be 2 recaps, top of the hour. 9 o'clock 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock. Those are your recaps. That's the only recaps you need for the entire show. We don't need a ton of replays, recap stuff that happened 5 minutes ago. Just let the guys wrestle. Quit rushing the guys and use the time that you have with the guys that you have.
I mean, what about this? What about like the 205s they just wrestle each other? Why can't like an Austin Aries and like a Rick Swann former tag team and go against the New Day and have a good feud? I mean, use them in different ways, not just the 205. I mean, I love the cruiserweight action. It just gets kind of stale because they keep the same matches going.
205 needs tag titles.
Yes,
I've said that from the beginning. They need tag titles. They need something else for those guys to do. That's just my personal opinion. I don't know. But
they have too many of them not to be using them.
Sure.
And just showing the same match. How many times have you seen Austin Aries go up against Brian Kendrick or somebody like that. I mean, it's been
And they're great matches, but
yeah.
we've seen them
we
1,000 times.
Yeah.
Right.
Why can't they just be, they're on Raw? Why can't they go after the tag team titles if they
Right.
form a tag team?
Yeah, I just think that and I'm not saying it's easy. I think when you get a big roster like that, it's hard to maximize everybody's talent and trying to get everybody on TV. I understand you can't get everybody on TV, but in the same sense, I think they could do. That's why I think I like SmackDown better, because I do feel like their storylines are a little bit more concise. Like, I think they do use their time better than what Raw does. And I feel like Raw should be the one using their time better because they got an extra hour. While SmackDown, I feel like, does a really good job of, just like that build up for last night. You may not like the tag match, but that first segment was on fire when they brought all 6 of those guys out. I thought it was really well done. So I don't know. I think they're still in the growing pains of the split, and I think it's they just mismanage what they have.
I'll tell you one thing that Raw done perfect Monday night is the Enzo thing, and you have to watch it real close, but you can see the Revival walk out of the background when they first find Enzo on the ground. So I mean, they're building up something that you might not see. What's his name in the ring for another month, maybe a couple weeks or whatever, but they're building that rivalry up. I mean, they do small things like that are really good, and then the bigger picture, just like, man, come on.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying WWE hasn't got better. I've said that before. I think this is probably the best. This is probably the best wrestling we've seen since when they first did the brand split when Heyman was booking SmackDown, and they was having just 5-star matches. Angle and then was just having 5-star matches with whoever was in the ring with him. So I mean, I'm not complaining in the sense that they've done better, but they still mismanage their time. And I think a lot of it has to do with they got a 3-hour show to fill, and that's tough to do. Even with a bigger roster, it's tough to do. So,
I mean, I think SmackDown handled it fine.
I think SmackDown's fine. I think both shows should be 2:00 or at 2
hours.
Should be 2 hours. 2:00
in the afternoon.
2:00. I think it should start at 8 and end at 10. And I know there's money involved, but quality of show, man. It's my personal opinion. All right. Here's a quick question, and then we'll move on to the reader question. We had a reader question. I'm sorry, listener question being sent in. We will read the listener's question. Who's your half-year wrestler? I mean, we're heading into June. Who's your most valuable wrestler of the halfway point? Now, this can be anybody. It can be indie. It could be WB. Just someone that you feel like you've really enjoyed and done their job really well so far. Joe, what about you?
Go to Jared first.
Jared, what about you?
Well, I can't say I've watched that much this year besides WrestleMania and maybe a couple of takeover segments. I mean, I think one of probably the best matches, and from what I've heard and seen, maybe Austin Aries since he's returned. Mm-hmm. He's put on a lot of good matches on the 205 and even on commentary. I mean, people were loving when he was calling the matches and his insight. So probably him.
Joe, what do you think?
I mean, I want to touch on Jared's. I think that's another thing that WWE done well was when Austin Aries was out, building him and oh my God, his name slipped my head up.
Neville
hit their rivalry, and they never touched each other for a month and a half. And I mean that was really good. Mine, man, I'm gonna say Adam Cole.
Okay, that's a great pick. Yep.
I mean, I think he's done great things over in Japan and on like the ROH and everything. I mean, now that he's coming on next or NXT, I think it's gonna be a great addition.
I want to give you two, one from the Indies and one from WB. I think Neville has been absolutely fantastic in WB. I think since they've turned him heel, he has been absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. I think he brings legitimacy to the cruiserweights. I hate that belt. That's the only thing I don't like about it is that belt's ugly. But But I was watching, his stuff with Aries. He had a match with Perkins and Jack Gallagher, and I like how they built him up and how he's kind of ran with that King of the Cruiserweights type of character. I think he's done a really, really good job. I think his promos has gotten better. I think his persona has gotten better. I think he found a really good character. I think he's running with it. I think he has done a great job for that 205 division. In the Indies, I tell you what, man, it's hard to go against Cody Rhodes, man. I think Cody Rhodes has had a fantastic half year. There's a lot of other guys. Marty Scurll has had a great year. Ricochet's had a great half year so far. But, Cody Rhodes, man, the enthusiasm that he brings to wrestling and just how much he loves to wrestle and how much you see him. I mean, he wrestled like 2 hours away from us. I didn't even know this till like a week. But he wrestled somewhere near Greenville, Knoxville. And he wrestled Matt Cross, which is another great talent in the Indies. Just to see him go to all these armories and all this stuff, I just think it's I think it's refreshing. I think it's great. He's part of the Bullet Club. I know people will complain about that, but I think it's great to see him in New Japan. His ROH stuff has been absolutely fantastic. I just think he's just to see how fun he's having with wrestling, man. I think that's one thing. And then, of course, the matches he's putting on with all these guys is just absolutely fantastic. So I think it's hard to bet against Cody Rhodes right now. I don't know if he'll ever go back to WB. I think he will at some point. I think he likes what he's doing now. But he is really – I think his stock has went way up. I think he's doing a great job. So all good picks, though.
I'll tell you, if WWE really wanted to do something – with all this indie trash talk that Randy Orton's been doing, they would be begging Cody Rhodes to come cut a huge promo against Randy Orton and show, come back off the indies and then book him against Orton. Yeah.
Be interesting. There's a lot of, booking things that could happen there, but
just give us Kenny Omega.
I think Kenny Omega's doing just fine.
He is. He is.
Which apparently Jim Cornette hates Kenny Omega. Much like he hates everybody, apparently. But
does Jim Cornette like anybody besides Jim Cornette?
That's true. I don't know. He likes the Rock and Roll Express an awful lot. So
that's true.
Jared, go ahead and read our listener question and tell us who it's from.
Yeah, my friend Justin sent me this, and he said, does it bother you how everybody kicks out of finishers now? To me, it kind of makes them less important. So I thought it was a really excellent question, something I've thought about for a while, but never really sat down and talked about it.
Joe, I'll let you go first on this.
I thought about this, and
I'm glad, man. I'm glad you prepared for the show and thought about this time.
I thought about this, and I was watching Takeover while I was reading these questions. Y'all was bringing them in, and I was watching the Rick Rude and Bobby Roode and Hideo Itami match. And how they would go for their they went for the finishers. Like, you could tell the match went about halfway through, and they went for them, and they kicked out. And going back old school, like, they didn't go for that finisher until it was time for that finisher. Hulk Hogan didn't go for the leg drop halfway through the match, which his matches were only about 3 minutes long anyway. I'm trying to think. Kevin Nash didn't powerbomb somebody, or Jake Snake didn't DDT somebody when it wasn't time for that move to happen. And now I think it's just they throw it in just like it's a regular move. I mean, it means something because when that move happens, when they kick out of it, man, it's just like it makes me kind of mad. It's like, come on, like, really, like, but they just throw it in there at a random point and. You're like, well, no wonder he kicked out. It's not even halfway through the match. He still has all this energy and all this fight left. But still, I don't think old school, you never see a finisher happen until it needed to happen. To me, anyway.
I'm going to go opposite here. And let me tell you why I'm going to go opposite. I don't mind finishers being the end-all and be-all. And obviously, we all grow up being finishers being end-all and be-all. Stuff like the DDT or the Powerbomb being some special moves that, even felt special when we went for it like on a video game or something. I mean, it just had that flair to it. I thought about this a lot, and I like matches because I still think the finisher has this mystique where you don't know if they're going to kick out. And it's still a finisher. And for me personally, like I feel like it does a couple things. It allows maybe for the finisher to be used in a different way. Like, for example, to be used off the top rope or used through a table or used in a different way to utilize it to beat a guy. I do feel like it helps to build this matchup between two mega stars or two big stars that adds the drama, like who's going to get knocked out first, who's going to get pinned first. Now, I don't like multiple kickouts. One kickout is all I like. I like one kickout. I think it builds the drama. It builds the emotion of the match. One kickout of the finisher, perfectly fine with me. I don't like multiple ones over and over. Like if you kick out a guy's finisher 3 times in a match, that's where it goes a little bit overboard. But if you get one kick out a match, especially in a fast exchange, he just hits the finisher and the guy falls over on top of it and kicks out. I don't mind that. I think it builds the drama of the match. The other thing that I think that they've done well, at least this generation of wrestlers, is they have a couple different moves they could finish a match off with. So you've got, for example, AJ's got the springboard 450. AJ's got the calf crusher. AJ's got obviously the Styles Clash. He has the phenomenal forearm. So they have these other signature moves, I guess, that are good moves that can beat people. And so they have numerous ways to beat you, even though their main finisher may not beat you. You can beat you in another way with another move. So I don't like, 2 or 3 times kick out, but if you give me one good kick out a match of a finisher, I'm perfectly fine with that. I don't have any issue with it at all. I don't think it diminishes any moves. I don't think it diminishes the finisher of the guy. I think it builds the match and builds it more of, who has more heart to win a lot of times type of thing. So I guess I'm a little bit old school in the sense I don't like it multiple time kick out, but I'm also new school in the sense that it's not bad if they kick out of finishers. I think it just builds the story a bit more.
Well, I think in a big match, a blow off match where you're trying to build a lot of tension, it's fine to do it once. Mm-hmm. If you look back at WrestleMania, I think it's 17 with Austin and The Rock. The Rock hit the rock bottom on Austin. Stone Cold hit the stunner. They both kicked out. Then The Rock hit the stunner. Stone Cold kicked out. Stone Cold hit the rock bottom on The Rock. He kicked out. They were using each other's moves to try to help build that tension. And then when finally I think Rock hit the rock bottom again, then, it was over. But in a big match like that, I can see doing it, but like in a regular match just on SmackDown, when you let them hit it and let it be over. Kind of build it up to be important. Right. If you build it up like that, when somebody does kick out, then you're like, oh, this is something special. And now I think that's where they're missing because the moves that they have aren't that special anymore. The DDT, everybody does it. The power bomb, everybody does it. Used to, if you hit a power bomb, the match was over. Right. Or a DDT or,
super kick.
I think one of the moves the RKO is kind of that way, though, because he'll hit it out of nowhere and the match is over.
Yeah.
So that's one of the very few moves that are still kind of held that way. The super kick, they'll hit out of nowhere, but then they kick out too.
Well, you were saying that a move that people use just all the time.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
super
Yeah,
kick
that's
now.
right. Yeah. Everybody uses it now. Yeah. So I wish, in stuff where it's not really that big of a match, just hit it and let it be over with. There's no need for the kick out. There's no need to build that extra story. You're building the person up that his finisher is a finisher.
Yeah. I think I think I agree, Jared, that the match has a lot to do with it and who's in it. I think that has even if it's like a SmackDown match, but it's AJ Styles versus Kevin Owens, like, whether it be a title on line or a number one contendership. I think, obviously you throw AJ in there, and I love, Tyler Breeze, but, you don't want to see Tyler Breeze kick out of AJ Styles' finisher. I think it does come down to who it is, the gravity of the match, and what story are you telling. I mean, these guys faced off, best of 7 or 6 times, and this is the rubber match type of thing. I think the situation had a lot to do with it. I agree with that 100%. All right.
Yeah. Well, no, I think we're in. For in.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Joe. You got.
I was just gonna say, like, the one thing that I miss most about finishers is you don't see that many submission finishers anymore. Like, I remember growing up, like when Ric Flair locked in the figure 4, and him and Sting, you see Sting trying to either reverse it or get to that rope. I miss that.
You don't have that tension building of that submission finisher.
Yeah, like
I mean the STF that Cena used, that's probably the closest one for a while, because they would fight close to the rope, but he would drag them back or.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's according to who it is. I think again, I think it comes down to who's in the match, because, like, for example, AJ and Cena, like the calf crusher. We've seen people book to tap out the calf crusher. Same with Cena's STFU. I think it's weird when someone, like, for example, like Kevin Owens slaps on the sharpshooter. You already know that's not his move. Like, it's not even
right.
I think it's according to who it is if you see it, because there's been a lot of matches like Daniel Bryan and and Cena has done the same thing where they're just going back and forth with holds. I think it comes down to who it is. Jericho and Styles with the calf crusher and the in the walls of Jericho.
Walls of Jericho. Yeah.
I think that builds the tension if that's one of their primary moves, and you've seen people tap out. It very could well be that you book them to tap out to that. So
I'm not saying. I'm just saying that I've missed the submission moves. Like, you don't see many of them anymore.
That's true. Or you see them shoehorned in, like somebody just all of a sudden, like, when did he start doing that?
Yeah,
type of thing. Yeah, it's a good question, and something that I think you going back to the independents, and even though like we talked about, Rip Rogers was right. That's how the matches go. Sometimes you do see finishers kind of used as more so, I guess as a prop more so than anything else to continue the match. I just think it's who's involved, what kind of story you're trying to tell. I think it has, and of course that's a lot of wrestling anyway. It's who's in it, what story you're trying to tell. But it's a good question. Yeah. You do definitely see it more now than you did even 5 years ago. To be honest, but I think that it just kind of helps. And to be quite honest, I mean, it kind of helps cement guys. Like, if you're trying to put a guy over, have him kick out of the attitude adjustment, have him kick out of the Styles Clash. I mean, I remember Bret Hart talk about how Kurt Hennig, he was the first one to kick out of the Perfect Plex, and how much it helped his career and how much it helped his character. He said Kurt Hennig didn't have to do that. He said, I could have done something else to save his finisher, but Hennig really wanted to put me over. So I think that's something that, if you're going to do that, that's a good way to use it as well. It just comes down to the story. And I agree, Jared. I mean, you can't have everybody and their mom kicking out everybody's finisher. I think that's stupid.
It does it adds a needed tension to the match if it's a big match.
Sure. Yep. Yeah.
But what was it? DDP and Macho, when they had that big feud in '97.
Yep.
Finally, they'd been working house shows and Nitro, and they'd have disqualification, and Macho, the NWO would come in, or all this stuff would happen, and finally Macho come to him one night, and they were in the book, and he's like, I'm gonna take the diamond cutter tonight, and you're going over. And that was that. I mean, he took the diamond cutter, and it kind of helped build that move. So I think that's just something that we miss now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's all how it's used, and who uses it and who kicks out and stuff. I think it just builds. If it makes sense, it's going to make sense, and you'll know it from the get go. You'll also know it from the get go when it's complete garbage and it shouldn't happen. For example, Cena kicking out of everyone's finisher, or Roman Reigns kicking out of everyone's finisher. It could be a little bit disconcerting at times. So, and just using those guys as examples. I'm not a hater of either one of those guys, but that's definitely.
I would love to see in a big match, like 7-8 minutes in, somebody hit the finisher and the match ends.
It's over.
And everybody's
It's
like,
over.
just what happened. And, that's how you build something up like that. That when it hits it, caught it out of nowhere. So now I don't mind like Punk and Cena used to do. He'd get him up in the GTS and Cena would slip out. And then
that's a great way out of a finisher.
That's
a
great way to build.
Yeah.
I mean, you just find a unique way. Rey Mysterio's great for that.
Yeah.
Because, people would pick him up powerbomb. He'd Frankensteiner. Oh, he'd go over and sunset flip. There was so many things that he could do to get out of those. And that's just that way to build that tension that makes you want to see that finisher.
Yep.
That's something they don't do.
So, yeah, great question, man. I mean, it's definitely something I think every wrestling fan kind of either hate, you love, or you're kind of in between as far as the situation goes. But, finishers mean something completely different like they did before. So, yeah, good question, man. Great question. Mm-hmm. So next week, I am going to tease a new segment we're going to do. We're going to start doing spotlight matches, just matches we've watched randomly, or maybe something that caught our eye. Maybe a good match, maybe a bad match, maybe a humorous match, whatever it may be, but something that caught our eye before the next episode. So I picked this one out for next week, and we're all going to watch it. But what we'll probably do is cut in a segment where we all watch it together and kind of give a little running commentary of it. Most of these will be on WB Network. If not, we'll specify we're watching on YouTube or something. But most of these are going to be on WB Network, I would imagine. Wrestle War 92, first of all, not a bad pay-per-view overall. Had a really good War Games match, I thought. Had some good tag team matches in there as well. But not overall. So I recommend you watch the whole thing. But one match in particular is the co-main event. It was Steiner Brothers defeated, I'll just tell you who won because it doesn't matter, defeated Tatsumi Fujinami and Tayayuki Iizuka. I butchering both these names. But basically, it's for a double war contendership for the IWGP Tag Team Championship. We'll do some history of it when we bring it up. But if you want to watch it beforehand, again, it's Wrestle War 92. It is on WB Network. It's in the pay-per-view section for WCW. I think there's only 2 Wrestle Wars, so they didn't go on with that pay-per-view after this year. But watch this match and then kind of have us talk about it, watch us talk about it, because it's interesting. It's really interesting where this match goes. So we'll talk about that next week. I'm pretty stoked about it because I thought this match was just fascinating about how it kind of turned out. So, Joe, you got anything to say before we get out of here?
No, not really.
Oh wow, that's a first.
Oh yeah, I got something to say.
Man.
I'm gonna say it every episode. Roman Reigns, take off that flak jacket, son. Show them big old saggy boobies.
Jared, what do you think, man? You got anything to say?
As long as Joe keeps his shirt on, I'm happy.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey, you're just lucky you can't see me from the waist down, buddy.
Oh, jeez. All right. For your editor-in-chief, my name is Aaron. I have nothing else to say. Come join us next time. And remember, Wrestle War 92, the Steiner Brothers versus Tatsumi Fujinami and Tayayuki Iizuka. We'll just call him Tayayuki. Go check it out and join us with the commentary next episode. For Yeti, for Jared, again, I'm Aaron, and we are out.